Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday show of this week. I was going to do something different. I was going to take a break from the news and the politics, and I was going to go to court for a little while and whine and complain about other things. And then last night happened, and a terrible tragedy. Two planes, plane and helicopter crashed into each other over the Potomac. They do not think anybody has survived the crash at this point. And so, of course, this means that it's the first time that some of the newly confirmed secretaries get to do their job. And the president, this will be the first time in this round that he gets to come out and be presidential. I mean, besides just the show of things and whatnot. And so he had the press conference that he came out to address the nation of this. Sorry, I buffered and got distracted by things. And this is the time. This is that moment. I think every president has at least one of those moments where something big goes on and they have to walk out and be the parent in the room and tell everybody the facts and also tell everybody that it's going to be okay even if it's not, or what they need to do if it's not going to be okay. This isn't the time to pitch a fit or to bring politics into it, because moments like this is not about politics. It's not about left or right, Democrat or Republican. It's about there was a thing that happened that was a problem and people died, and now we have to figure out how to keep it from happening again. So, if you can't tell from how hot I came in, I did watch this in real time today. And shockingly, my computer is still on the table. Because I am surprised that I did not throw it out the window watching this. And this is, for me, it's not, trust me, this isn't about politics. This is about how you're supposed to act and what you're supposed to do. And I was following this from rather late last night all the way through most of the day today, and then I needed to take a little break before I chatted with you guys. So if we've gotten new information since about 3:30, 4 o'clock this afternoon, I don't have it. So what we are going to do, because I know if you are like a lot of my friends who can't watch this stuff without it being broken up and without somebody yelling at the TV at these guys for you. So we're going to do this together. And I probably am going to have some soapbox things, and I don't know how long we're going to take tonight. I'm going to roll the intro. I am going to get back to doing time-stampy things, and while I'm rolling the intro, please do the YouTubey things. If you're here and you're not subscribed and you're just coming across this and you like what I'm doing, click all the buttons. Tell the YouTube algorithm that you like me, you really like me, and it will keep sending you these things. We're going to need a dose of humor. We're going to need to get through this with a little help from our friends. So with that, I am going to go ahead and roll the intro. Then we are going to get into it. I can't promise I'm not going to stop multiple times and yell at things, because again, I know what's coming. But we're going to do it together. And at the end of it, we're going to take a big breath in, and we're going to go watch something else. And that's what we're going to do. Hello and welcome to the Unfiltered Tea, a show where we say all the things you wish the newscasters said, unscripted and unfiltered. We talk about news, politics, and entertainment, so pull up your soapbox, pour yourself a cuppa, and let's go. Let us go. Let's just get right into it. And again, on the one hand, I'm going to try and be fair. And on the other hand, there comes a point where being fair means saying some stuff. Also, yeah, I know I'm live. I know I'm not supposed to. I know YouTube doesn't like it. I am a fan of the cursey words. And we're not monetized yet. So we are going to make full use of that and probably swear a blue streak. So if that is if you have some delicate sensibilities, I'm just going to warn you, the likelihood of lots of expletives is pretty high tonight. So let us start with this. Oh, wait, I should zoom, but I don't have to. Oh, no, here we go. I did cue it up rather well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to request a moment of silence for the victims and their families, please. Thank you very much. I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for a nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal. And I have to say, the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast. It was mobilized immediately. The work is now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark.
There are no expected survivors. We do not actually know that there are no survivors for a fact. It's just that given the temperature of the water, the time of night, how long it's been, and the fact that we do not have them in hand as of 11 o'clock this morning, words matter. That's why I'm quibbling with that.
Dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly. And we are a country of we are in mourning. This is really shaken a lot of people, including people very sadly from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent, some very talented people. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy Potomac, it was a cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us. Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God. We do not
Sorry. I
know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now.
Okay, this is where he's starting to go off script. You'll notice he's reading up to this point. He didn't write this. I'm guessing. But he is not a president who typically writes his own speeches of this particular nature. Because you can sort of tell when he starts to go off script. Um, there are some presidents, Clinton, Obama, uh, probably Reagan, but I don't know. Um, that write a lot of their own stuff. They've got their speechwriter, but then they come in and they do stuff on it. This is not one of those. And we have some opinions. That's the warning that he's about to go off script, which doesn't often go well.
Because over the years I've watched as things like this happen and they say, well, we're always investigating. And then the investigation 3 years later, they announce it. We think
that is because, okay, this has been driving me crazy since I've seen it. No, in Smolin, sir. I need to get on my soapbox for a minute. The reason that investigations like this can take years, as frustrating as it is, and it is frustrating, especially for the loved ones left behind, especially for the public, is that in order to do a good and proper investigation, it has to be methodical. Testing, those sorts of things, logging, cataloging, gathering all of the evidence, processing all of the evidence, doing reconstructions, things like that. That takes time if you're doing it right. And yes, you want all of the information right away, but that's not always how we bring in all of the facts. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. And rushing an investigation of this nature, I don't think would be advised by anybody. Now, I am not a forensic scientist on any level. I'm just a person with a mic. But I don't think it's wise to encourage rushing just because you don't want this to take time. Nobody wants it to take time. No one does. But we need to slow down to speed up in moments like this. I warned you I was going to have things to say.
Have some pretty good ideas, but we'll find out how this disaster occurred and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation. Our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, his second day on the job when that happened. It's a rough one. We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people, and they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. We will state certain opinions, however. I'm also immediately appointing an acting commissioner to the FAA, Christopher Rocheleau.
So my understanding is that the previous leader of the FAA was harassed enough that he resigned. So sure, I need to do more research on this cat.
22-year veteran of the agency, highly respected. Christopher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary.
Sir.
You remember that.
our aviation has for a while now required the best of the best. It is one of the hardest jobs to become, or how to put this, in order to become an air traffic controller, that is one of the hardest jobs to obtain in this country, because if you mess up, people die and you get this. So we're starting to go off the rails. This is the moment where politics should not be coming into it. And if this were any of the Democrats that have held office in my lifetime, all my social medias would be just a fire from everybody on all sides calling for how inappropriate that is. This time around, it's just people like me.
Only the highest aptitude,
It's
have to
already in
be
place.
the highest intellect,
We can
and
do better.
psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence. And
I want to know what he thinks superior intelligence is. That's what I want to know.
we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to
No, he
lower
didn't.
than
Fact check
ever
now.
before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first.
I'd say pot kettle, but that, no, sir, no, no, no. Wrong. Wrong. These are not facts. These are inaccurate.
And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen.
Says the man who's bringing politics into a press briefing to grieving families and a nation where politics is not at play. This isn't political. And all of a sudden, we are, 5 minutes into his speech, and it's political.
Because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week.
I need to find whatever that
was an
order is.
executive
but I
order,
don't.
very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers
Do
and
you-
others, by the way.
Mm.
Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like.
Really? Then why'd you hire only white folks for the most part? Just an observation.
How they speak, who they are. It matters. Intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses.
Oh, we are now officially
Can't have regular
off script.
people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And there it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
Diversity still means you can, sir, you still have to pass the really fucking hard test to pass. You still have to do that.
Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration. This was before I got to office recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant
We
people
have a fact.
have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it.
You need to be able to learn and train and pass one of the hardest exams there is. Yes, you do.
Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete.
I'm just going to say you can be missing a limb, and I mean, I don't know, but if we're just talking the mental thing, you can be missing a limb and do the air traffic controller thing. I don't know what the buildings are like. I don't know that. There might be other questions, but
Sleep paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism.
Dwarfism, sir? Dwarfism? Really? Really? First of all, most of this is hogwash. As far as the FAA is actively recruiting, I'm paraphrasing, Dexter to come be an air traffic controller. That's not a thing. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that part of the testing and part of the recruitment is to make sure that you are physically and mentally able to do the job. Because again, that's a requirement straight up. It's not new. And also, can we take a minute to discuss dwarfism, which has, sir, that's a weird thing to put in with the rest of the mix that you just said. Like, it is objectively bizarre. And maybe I'm just a little more defensive because there are folks with dwarfism in my extended family. I think most of them are gone at this point, but I don't understand how that made it in there, or how that would make it so that you couldn't do the job. Like, I have questions as to how dwarves wouldn't be able to do the job. Like, I need to know more. Is it that we haven't built anything so that they could? I realize we're going to be here forever if I keep stopping, but we all need the break in between the crazy.
All qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website.
Sir, I realize that you have failed upwards on an epic scale. But diversity pretty much across the board is not
shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg. A real winner. That
Sir.
guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation?
First of all, stop making fun of people's names. If I can manage to not rip into you on a personal level, you can manage to not. You can manage to learn somebody's name and not make fun of it every time you say it. Also, fact check. Wrong.
He's a disaster. He was a
Uh-uh.
disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The
Wow.
Department of Transportation,
Really?
his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So
How did
I had to
what?
say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they
Oh my heavens, sir. Now is not the time to be quibbling over your election numbers? Really? You're supposed to be the grown up in the room. That is what you were. For those of you who forgot, because I did for a minute, he is here because we had a horrific tragedy that involved a helicopter and a plane crashing into each other and ending up in the icy river. That's why we're here. This isn't a groundbreaking ceremony. This isn't, a storm came through and we can't build our new tower. Real time, there are people still not recovered. This is where we're at.
actually came out with a directive too white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it. So
Good.
we all saw the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as everybody else. They came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more. He's coming in the path. And for some reason, he had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, "Do you see?" He was talking about, "Do you see him?" But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also he said, "Follow him in." And then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place. Well, you follow him in. That means like everything's fine. Follow him in.
Sir, perhaps I am being too judgy. It's possible. It's possible I'm being too judgy. Um, that I don't think he has any idea. He just heard a lot of words and he wants to explain them. And I, I, I just, uh,
You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter, I mean, because it was visual, it was a very clear night. It was
A pilot problem on behalf of the helicopter? So you're blaming the with zero information. We are blaming the military pilot. Our military pilot. That's where we're starting.
was cold but clear, and clear as you could be.
Oh, I forgot to turn
the American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all their landing lights on. I could see it from the Kennedy Center tape. We had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary. Thus far, I'm sure we'll see other tapes because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by. But we had a situation where you had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down.
I have to put that back up. Sir, just because you own helicopters does not for 1 second mean I think that you can fly them. Some, yes. You, no. Just because you have them does not make you an expert. Yeah, exactly. It's always all about him, no matter what.
Turn. And the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously. And it did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that that would have been the difference because
you don't know that. And if you do, you should not be spitting it out the way that you are here under this. But you don't know that.
The timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken.
We don't know.
And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made
you don't know the
slight turn at the very end. And by that time, it was too late. They shouldn't have been at the same height. Because if it wasn't the same height, you could have gone under it or over it. And
we have entered the no shit Sherlock part of the rambling. They shouldn't have been at the same height. Yeah, that's part of the problem. That's one of the things that we need to figure out in the investigation. Also, you were not in that plane. You do not know what either pilot could or could not see.
Nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, it still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher. It could have been 200 feet lower, but it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened, and some things happened that shouldn't have happened. So you had a helicopter going and...
Yeah, because as a general rule, planes don't intend to fly into other planes.
Identical direction. You had a helicopter that was at the exact same height as somebody going in essentially the opposite direction. You had a plane that was following...
Am I on a loop or is he? I truly cannot tell at times.
Following a track, which is a track that every other plane followed. And I don't imagine, I know I've heard today that they might have been following the preceding plane, which was pretty close, but not that close, the preceding plane. But you wouldn't have even been able to see that because of the direction that the helicopter was coming in at. So you had a confluence of bad decisions that were made. And you have people that lost their lives, violently lost their lives.
Yes. Which is why
we're going to take a few questions. I'd like to ask our...
They did tragically lose their lives. It's why you need to be the consoler in chief and, lead the nation instead of
Our new Secretary of Transportation to say a few words. Sean Duffy, great gentleman, just started. It's not your fault, and I know you agree with me very strongly on intellect and even psychological well-being of the air traffic control.
oh,
Such
for
an
heaven's
important
sake.
position.
To imply that the people who are currently working air traffic control are somehow not up to par with no proof, I find truly horrific on so many levels.
And I think I can't emphasize stronger. I changed it when I first ran in 2016. I changed it.
For heaven's sakes, it is not about you. Stop with the CV. I'm
We
speeding
had
you
the
up.
highest standard that you could have. And then they changed it back. That was Biden to a standard I read it to you. That was from one of your
No.
papers. One of the people in this room actually wrote that. And then I changed it back a few days ago. And unfortunately, that was, we'll see. We don't know that necessarily it's even the controller's fault. But one thing we do know, there was a lot of vision, and people should have been able to see that, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say, wow, that plane's getting a little bit close? So this is a tragedy that should not have happened. Please.
Tragedy should not have
Thank you,
happened.
Mr. President. And I would just
Yes.
note the president's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We've had a whole of government response, local, state, federal. And when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You
No.
make our jobs a lot easier.
No.
You made it.
First responders, police, firefighters, all the first responders in an incident like this, they're great in a lot of areas. This is an area where they're absolutely stellar. And it does not matter who is president, they are still that good.
An important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest.
Which is odd, because I've never seen a cabinet picks grouping that was so not the best and the brightest at all. I'm going to give this a little longer, but then they just all...
The most intelligent
a
company
lot
in
of the
these spaces.
same.
I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we
Yes.
are going to get to the bottom of this investigation.
Good.
Not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible with the NTSB, who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened?
Gentle reminder, slow down to speed up. Rushing an investigation will lead to problems. I follow enough court, enough trials, I can tell you right now.
Happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It
Yes.
should not have happened.
Correct.
And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's not acceptable. And so we
Correct.
will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA.
10-1, they do not take responsibility because they have done a terrible job of taking responsibility so far.
To make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President. And I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
Pete, would you like to say something?
Yes, I've sped them up.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened.
There is a genuine appreciation for presidential leadership. I've seen it with Obama. I've seen it with Biden. I've seen it with Clinton. I've seen it with Bush. And it's again, right and left. I have seen moments with that genuine appreciation of good leadership. And you can tell there's like whoever is saying that is thinking of a particular story. This is so hollow and gross. It's just, it is absolutely disgusting to me considering why we are here. It is super gross.
I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We first and foremost from the Defense Department want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this. Never should happen.
Can't do math,
And
sir.
certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers,
There we go.
captain, staff sergeant, and CW2 chief warrant officer on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DoD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top tier aviation assets inside the DoD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DoD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible.
I am so tired of this line. Also, I know the flag code of conduct, sir. You are now officially SecDef, and you're breaking it. And I'm going to call you out on it every time you do, because it's a tiny little thing that irks me. And I'm going to call you out on it every time you break flag code of conduct. Your little pocket square, you're breaking flag code of conduct.
As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based.
Colorblind and merit-based doesn't mean white folks. I feel like that's what you're implying.
The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control or whether.
Remind me, sir, what your actual experience and expertise is for the job you currently hold? Being on Fox News. Do I have that right? Because I feel like the hypocrisy is just a little
Whether it's in our
stronger than
generals,
it should be.
or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you very much.
JD, please.
Okay, so they have said nothing.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this.
Good, that's what you're supposed
but
to
also
do.
try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control. And we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go.
It's not a campaign rally. This is not a campaign rally. Stop. I beg you.
Go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years. You have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of.
Sir, you don't want to go here because I will tear you to, I will tear your argument to shreds.
These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had 2 planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that. And we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior. And that's what
I want to know what you mean by psychologically superior.
Yeah, go ahead.
President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
Yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries.
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Mr. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the Democratic
Republic
Republic
of the Congo. Question about Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it. But it is a very serious problem.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control, and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all.
Excellent question. And yes, you are.
Oh, I don't think with the names of the people. You mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference?
Does it cover their families?
They are.
It makes a difference to their families, you cold-hearted. I'm trying really hard not to name call, but the shocking lack of empathy to just shout out names, not knowing if their families have been notified. Sir. Sorry, that was very loud, but sir.
A group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you. Please.
And to insult the reporters. This is...
Thank you. Thank you,
I'm going to give it one more.
Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who was at fault, if it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was based on vision.
You didn't give the analysis. You gave what you thought based on what you would do, given that you don't have a pilot's license and aren't a member of the military.
A lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. Those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given. A few seconds later, there was a crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing, what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height.
It's a lot more complicated. Having listened to a lot of pilots, it's a lot more complicated than just, you should have seen what was in front of you.
If you're going in reverse directions or sideways directions, obviously you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower, we're higher.
In case you were wondering, he's not actually flying. He's riding in a plane with a pilot doing all of the work.
So if somehow there's a screw up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines standard, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was...
Also, it's not a track. It's not a railroad track. It's different.
A helicopter doing in that track. It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play, and they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passengers?
There were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no. Not about this.
On your executive order, you've already issued an executive order. You say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well, we issued it 3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes. This is.
I thought that once you issued an executive order, you needed it to happen immediately. Just that.
Something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. We see everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hires in the federal government? What's plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see
I
that,
don't see the
I'm not going
language.
to
I
bore
see
you by
you
reading it
telling
again,
me the
but
language.
these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistakes. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense.
Sir. Really? Sir. We're done. We're done with you. We're done with you. That's where we're going to leave this because it doesn't get any better. It just doesn't. What we have learned is that we don't know a lot. This was a moment for the president to be a president. And you know what? He was a petulant child. He was a petulant child. This is not the time. Can you imagine for one moment if anybody on the center or left came out, if this were reversed, right? Let's just say, for a pure hypothetical, Trump lost the election. This is Harris. She comes out and she spends 20 minutes saying, well, when Trump was in office, he did this. And when Trump was in office, he did that. And when Trump was in office, and now I've personally fixed things with 47 executive orders. Can you imagine? Every media outlet would be going crazy. The headlines would be all over the place. All my social medias, all of my socials would be just full of how she should resign, how that's unprofessional, blah, blah, blah. This happened. His job was to come out and show a shred of empathy or a charismatic stoicism and confidence that we were going to get this figured out. And instead, he came out and pitched a fit about the FAA not being all white men. Because the reality is DEI. We're going to be colorblind. It translates into we're mad that, white men aren't making the cut anymore. And maybe I'm wrong, but so far, based on all of their track records, that's what it means. So that's what I'm sticking with. If they prove me wrong, great. I would love for them to prove me wrong. But this was disgusting. It was disgraceful. And at this point, this is not about politics. The politics of it were the confirmation hearings happening at the same time that this was going on. And I did not watch all of them because they're all like 4 hours long. 2 of them were happening simultaneously. And I needed to maintain some sense of sanity because, of course, I'm listening. I'm not watching because I'm also working, which is good because if I was just watching, I would have lost my mind. So, yeah, with all of this, you know what? I'm going to swoop before I get on my soapbox because, yeah. Okay. Because at some point I will timestamp. But I am going to get on my soapbox for a little bit because we ended up here because, well, the legacy media just treated this as normal. They're still treating this as normal. It's why I'm here. It's why I am talking to you. It's why I'm putting myself through this twice in one day. Because we need something that isn't just excuses for this man, because this is not okay. This is just objectively not okay. For prime example on why I don't think it's politics. I disagree with Liz Cheney on just about everything. I disagree with just about everybody at the Lincoln Project on just about everything. I would very much like to go back to having very heated debates with people like that and generally disliking each other. Instead of all of us being on the same side. But at this point, we are all on the same side, which brings me to my soapbox of soapboxes tonight. If you are a Democrat and you are in office, especially if you are on one of these committees, for the love of all things, for the love of your country, because most people, the majority of the country, doesn't want most of these policies. They don't want a lot of these policies that have been put in place, and they don't want a lot of the executive orders that are coming down. Polling says so. It's why it's happening so fast. They're barreling through to get a lot of unpopular things done, because when folks actually got the information about Project 2025, they didn't want it. So now it's being forced upon us through executive orders and various other actions that are not constitutional, and they know they can get away with it because the Supreme Court was like, well, if you're president, what's the Constitution to you anyway? So if you still have a seat at the table, especially on these committees, and you have a voice, what your job is to speak up for the 60-70% of the country that doesn't want this and doesn't want people who do not know how to do the job and could be of danger. Most of these guys wouldn't be able to get a job at your local cable company. And we are going to put them into intelligence jobs and jobs that require a lot of highly sensitive information. They all know they're going to get confirmed, and they probably all will. And it won't be a fight, because an alarming number of Democrats aren't putting up a fight, and an alarming and even more alarming number of Republicans are like, well, I don't want you, but I'm supposed to say so to keep the party line. Stop it. Just stop. Everybody stop worrying about your next election. Just do your job. Speak for your constituents. Listen to your constituents. Don't get all condescending with your constituents. Don't sit there and go, well, you don't know how Washington works. Dems, you're the worst at that. I'm sorry, but you are. But listen. Do what folks want. If expertise is the name of the game for some of these cabinet picks, make him choose someone else. Please. Make him choose somebody with brains. And at this point, I don't care who it is that starts advising him and Vance and the rest of them, but we need better advisors, because the country, we have to live here. They're in their own bubble, and Musk can just buy a whole new planet if he wants to. So we need you to, what was it AOC said? Get in the way. Do your job. I don't care if it's an R next to your name or a D next to your name, although if you have a D next to your name and you are even thinking of any of this, I need you to provide us with a really good explanation. Because some of you have really good explanations and some don't. So we're going to need that. I'm going to swoop again because that was a big old soapbox and I should get down. We should all take a moment. I'm going to swoop and then we're going to take a moment. That was a lot. It was big news. Our hearts go out to the families, anybody who witnessed that. I mean, I have family and friends in that area, and for most of us, we still remember September of 2001. And when you see something like this, there's that little part of you that immediately jumps to that kind of feeling, especially if you had lived there. I am very far removed from it. I'm not saying that's me. I'm just saying I've seen it in my friends and my family from that area. And from areas like that, there is that piece. So what we need to do as our little selves is we need to make sure that we do not consume so much of the fire hose of news that we shut down or shut off. Because we have to keep that empathy going because that's what our strength is. So we are going to, as we usually do, right? We're going to have our moment where we are here and we come together and we find our friends and we find some little bit of silly things. Sunday, it is going to have to, I mean, at this point, I don't know what the scale is, but Sunday when we gather, I want to talk about law stuff. I do. I want to talk about the ridiculousness of red Solo cups and stuff like that. I want to bring it way down so that the lives that we are discussing are, this person here, that person there. So for them, it's very big, but for the rest of us, we can have a bigger conversation. That's what I would really love to do. At the rate the executive orders and the news cycle are going, I don't know if we're going to get there. So if you see something that you are looking at it, you're like, oh my God, Aurora, how am I going to get through this? I don't know how I'm going to get through this. You know what? You're going to drop it in the comments. You're going to ask if we can break it down, or you're going to ask if I can just yell at the TV with you, because that's how we're going to get through this. We're just going to get through this by gathering together and watching some of the things that hurt because of stupid it burns. And yeah, I said that because it is true in my head. And I shouldn't have, but I did. I'd feel worse about it, except it's nowhere near the level of things that some of these folks have said. So anyway, let us all take a breath. Take a what is it we used to say back in the theater days? In with Jesus, out with Satan. So take a deep breath in and out. We are going to get through this. Yeah, it might be a little tough, but you know what? If you've got a voice, use it. Find your friends, find your people, stay safe, because the world seems wild. So stay safe and find your people. Keep finding the humor in things, because you know what? That's how we're going to get through it. We have to find a way, and that is definitely a path through it. I thank you all for being here. Do all of the YouTube-y things. I hope that you are well. And one of these, I'm buffering at this point, so I need to you know what we need to do? There. There was something about still having him on my other screen that was just, ugh. Keep speaking truth to power. Facts are friends. Hug your pet. I'm going to see you guys on Sunday. Sunday is going to be fun day unless something truly major just goes haywire. But if you have something that you want me to look at, drop in the comments. And I will see you on Sunday. Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Unfiltered Tea. Don't forget to hit that like button If you have a story you want our unfiltered take on, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and we will see you next time.